Chapter 169 Overdosing on Resources. A nightmare fell upon the new students from the other schools. They had no time to pay attention to how Mo Fan had escaped from the forest of Khan's imprisonment. "Dean Xiao, what do we do now?" asked the other deans. "Can't you see that chaos has overwhelmed the crowd?" Although they had not figured out exactly how Mo Fan escaped, what had happened right before them was something that had not occurred in the past 10 years. It was obvious that this scene was going to be even more difficult to handle. "Why don't we convince Mo Fan to give up? This is getting out of hand," said Zhang Zhenghua. Previously, they did not think that this would be possible, so they listened to Dean Xiao obediently. Who would have thought that rather than just being a competent summoner mage, Mo Fan was also a mage that was able to manipulate intermediate-tier lightning element magic? Apart from that, this guy must have hidden a portion of his true strength, or his winning streak would have been terminated by Mu Nujiao, as she was basically invincible among the new students. "Rules are rules. They are not to be broken," replied Dean Xiao with a cold humph as he rejected Zhou Zhenghua's suggestion. With a frown, Dean Xiao looked at the messy situation and let out a loud shout. His shout echoed throughout the arena and forced everyone to shut up. "Enough, this marks the end of the competition. The resources for this current batch of newcomers will be placed under the summoning element," announced Dean Xiao with no hesitation. Dean Xiao. Without giving any chances for the others to speak, Dean Xiao said coldly, "In truth, the resources given to you this semester are more than enough for all of you. Right now, what all of you couldn't accept is not that your resources are gone. You just couldn't accept that the resources are being given to one person. Why didn't a single one of you jump out and refute the suggestion about the resources of the summoning element being distributed to the others if they defeated less than 100 students? Was it because of the mere 7 students of the summoning element? Was it because they couldn't protest like uncivilized barbarians like all of you are because of their small numbers? Have you all forgotten what I said during the opening ceremony? Have you all forgotten the rules of how our school cultivates mages? This has never happened throughout the years, and this has proved that we have always been the same for so long without any changes, especially among the new students. Today, I am more than happy that someone finally broke this previously unchanged situation. He might not be able to change the world yet, but this is a good start." Dean Xiao's angry and disappointed words struck everyone like raging thunder. Upon hearing his words, those older students who were cultivating in the Pearl Institution all lowered their heads and dared not mutter any more words, let alone the newcomers. If they had disagreed with this before everything started, Dean Xiao would have disregarded the idea of letting Mo Fan get all the resources right now. Why did they wait until Mo Fan triumphed against all odds and only started to protest after all of their own profits were taken away by someone else? If the Pearl Institution only took in students like those guys, then Dean Xiao would be even more willing to donate these resources to those with greater ambitions and willpower who had failed to enter the association, in order to fully utilize them. At least, those mages out there now knew that the resources were hard to get. At this time, a man with determination and pride stood up and questioned Dean Xiao loudly. "Dean Xiao, what you said is right, but have you ever considered people like us who come from a poor family? We greatly depend on the resources given by the school to cultivate. We have to compete with those rich students that possess a greater amount of resources, and they only paid a tiny bit of effort for the resources they have. Each and every portion of resources means a lot to poor students like me." Facing this question, Dean Xiao took down his glasses and glanced at this young man in the audience. Dean Xiao was not irritated at all as he answered, "Because this is a school, you had the chance to ask a foolish question like this. You think Mo Fan was born with a golden spoon in his mouth. You think he came from a rich and noble family, which is why he reached the intermediate level much earlier than you all, correct?" "Yes," replied the young student. "Fine, I did not want to bring this up, but since you have questioned me about this on behalf of the many mages that come from average families, then I will tell you. This student that plundered all of your resources came from Bo City," replied Dean Xiao angrily. "Bo City? That Bo City that was in the news about a year ago?" The tragedy that happened in Bo City would never be forgotten. According to the statistics, there were more than 100,000 casualties. That day was a day where the bloodshed was enough to form rivers. He came from an average family, with average resources, and whatever he had at that time were probably even worse than the majority of you. "I think I've said enough," replied Dean Xiao as he sighed. Everyone went quiet immediately upon Dean Xiao's reply. That student looked at Mo Fan, who was at the center of the arena, in disbelief. How was it even possible that someone at his age without any resources could advance into the intermediate level? How was that possible? Mu Nujiao also looked at the man who defeated her, shocked. In truth, she had taken Mo Fan as one of the strongest disciples of a large faction out there, but who would have thought that he was actually just a nobody from Bo City? No wonder he didn't use any magic equipment. He probably doesn't even own one. In the battles between the disciples of the rich and noble families, the use of magic equipment was even more frequent than magic casting. Mu Nujiao had thought that her opponent did not use any because he did not want to show off his wealth, just like her. Dean Xiao, this is all unnecessary attention. Is it really all right for you to expose my information just like that? How am I supposed to chase after the beautiful ladies of the rich after this? Asked a speechless Mo Fan. Ha 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 ha. I was very angry, and since a great example like you came by very handily, I took this chance. Speechless, Mo Fan shut his mouth. It is very easy to garner hostile attention after becoming the brilliant kid next door that outperformed everyone. Sigh, fine, so be it. Since I robbed everyone of their resources, no one from the new students will like me anymore. Mo Fan believed that the students who were admitted to Pearl Institute were all people with good morals. However, he would carry a silver needle whenever he went to the cafeteria, just in case. Still, after the competition ended, Mo Fan couldn't stop feeling great. Although the resources were not the core resources given to the students by the institution, just with this amount, he was still happily overwhelmed. In the space of 1 second, he had gone from being one of the poor to one of the rich. Chapter 170 Strategy. The remaining 6 people from the summoning school already regarded Mo Fan as a god. They knew their capabilities and obediently let Mo Fan claim all that he had obtained, while they only took what belonged to them. Whether or not Zhang Yunming meant it, there was no reason for Mo Fan to share the resources with the 6 of them. He had poured in a considerable and desperate effort for the resources, despite knowing that he would make himself a public enemy of the entire school. Dean Xiao mentioned that he will convert all public resources into my own cultivation resources. I wonder how much they'll be? Will I be able to obtain resources for the evolution of the spirit wolf? Said Mo Fan softly to himself. Mo Fan had a strong feeling that if the spirit wolf was able to advance into the warrior class, he would be unstoppable among those at his level, and he might even be able to challenge those at a higher level. Mo Fan still clearly remembered the time where he saw a warrior class monster himself. He could still remember the impact and the awe brought by the warrior class 3-eyed demon wolf when it pounced out from the building out of nowhere. After experiencing the huge incidents that happened in the competition, there was a rapid change in his daily life. First of all, there were only 3 people left in his dormitory. The other 2 roommates of Mo Fan, who seemed to be afraid of being dragged into the chaos stirred up by Mo Fan, had quickly submitted an application requesting to move into another dormitory. Thus, only Mo Fan, Zhang Pinggu, and Zhao Manyan remained in the same dormitory. Zhang Pinggu now admired Mo Fan so much that he had turned into a fanboy, while Zhao Manyan, on the other hand, reacted much more normally. However, one of his favorite questions for Mo Fan was now, since you fought with Mu Nujiao before, can you tell if she is a C or D cup? Mo Fan was extremely speechless at his question, for how could he be able to do precise measurements during a fight, not to mention such an intense contest with Mu Nujiao. But judging from what he saw, perhaps she has a D cup. There would be quite some time until Mo Fan could access the resources granted to him because of some procedures, but as someone who was not in a hurry, he patiently waited while he kept on training himself. Time passed quickly, and 1 month has passed ever since the competition. The discussions about the competition were gradually replaced by some other fresh news, but occasionally, Mo Fan could still hear Zhang Pinggu talking about a few newly appeared strong competitors. One of them was said to be a student that enrolled at the school quite late, but that student might possess strength greater than Mo Fan's. This was inevitable. Mo Fan had made himself a public enemy to the entire school. Thus, even though everyone knew that he was strong, they were all unwilling to acknowledge him as the strongest in the school. As a result, they were all naturally more fond of the other individuals who possessed greater strength than those on the same levels, and since none of them have had a fight with Mo Fan, everyone just assumed that they were stronger than Mo Fan. Hey! Did you guys know that Mu Nujiao did something that caused the entire school to view her as a goddess? Said Zhang Pinggu as he stormed into the dormitory while both Mo Fan and Zhao Manyan were meditating as they were lazy to attend classes. Zhao Manyan's eyes opened first when he heard the name of Mu Nujiao. He has great interest in Mu Nujiao and would literally stop anything he was doing or working on, even if it's in the midst of advancing into the next level. Zhang Pinggu then continued to say, Mu Nujiao took on the responsibilities for what happened in the competition, and she donated an equivalent amount of resources won by Mo Fan to everyone in the school with the name of the Mu family. This time, Mo Fan opened his eyes as well. Why is she doing this? Asked Mo Fan in surprise. Isn't she being way too generous? The responsibility of losing the resources was not on her, so why is she trying to compensate all of the new students for their own losses? Yeah, I agree, it was unexpected. Not even the school expected her to do this. It's a total blessing from the goddess, replied Zhang Pinggu in great excitement. Zhao Manyan thought for a while, and soon understood the reason for Mu Nujiao's seemingly irrational move. It's just a kind of strategy, said Zhao Manyan. How so? Asked Mo Fan. The public resources were a really great deal, an amount that even a financially well-capitalized aristocratic family would not be able to afford spending just like that. Each year, every major aristocratic family will spend a great deal of resources to recruit graduated and undergraduate students from the prestigious schools. And for Mu's family, they were merely doing this earlier this year in an attempt to gain the favor of the freshmen. Supposedly, the school normally does not allow this to happen, but after losing such a huge amount of public resources, the school only silently approved this and allowed Mu Nujiao to do as she pleased, explained Zhao Manyan. But it's still way too costly just for a good reputation. And I wonder if the people will still side with Mu's family when they are offered a better prospect in the future, replied Zhang Pinggu. Gold can be nothing for a wealthy person with a luxurious life. However, when you offer a bowl of rice to a person who is starving to death, he will never forget your generosity to him till the end of his life. Mu's family is being smart in the way that they are taking the overall situation into consideration to draw people to their side. Perhaps not everyone or only a minority of them will join Mu family in the future, but the Mu family has earned themselves a good reputation among the entire school, Zhao Manyan pointed out bluntly. Zhang Pinggu sniffled. To be frank, if Zhao Manyan did not point this out, he would really think that Mu Nujiao was doing this out of her guilt, thus, accepting her as a goddess with a pure and kind heart. Mo Fan looked at Zhao Manyan with a little surprise. Well, he seems to really know well about all these stratagems. He must have been mixing around with the aristocratic family all this while or he would not be able to see through Mu Nujiao's motive, Mo Fan thought. Are you telling me that under her pure and pretty-looking facade lies a heart full of schemes? I truly admire her as my goddess, said Zhang Pinggu impetuously. The decision wasn't really on her. The Mu's family was the one who came up with this idea after they were told that Mu Nujiao lost all the resources. And as someone who felt extremely guilty for losing all the resources to Mo Fan, Mu Nujiao will definitely accept this proposal. It was a win-win situation, explained Zhao Manyan again. Oh, that's great, you almost ruined the image of the dream girl in my heart, said Zhang Pinggu with relief. Mo Fan, too, was filled with all sorts of feelings today. Seems like not all aristocratic families were blindly abusing their power after all. A truly huge family knows very well the benefits and importance of maintaining their image and reputation in order to recruit potential magicians. Initially, it was a bad thing for the Mu family when Mu Nujiao lost the battle, and thus lost everyone's resources. But the situation quickly turned around and they made use of the previously bad situation to benefit themselves. The Mu family had gained a profound advantage, and it would be much harder for the other aristocratic families to compete with them in the future. By the way, how did you escape from that intermediate-level plant magic? The forest is thick. None of us were able to see what exactly happened there. What were the tricks that you used? Zhang Pinggu asked Mo Fan curiously. The entire school will know in the twinkling of an eye if he tells you. You big blabbermouth, replied Zhao Manyan. Mo Fan couldn't agree more, so he just nodded his head silently. There was no way he would simply reveal his trump cards to another. Tell me quietly, I promise I will keep the secret for you, Zhao Manyan said to Mo Fan with a filthy look and a raised eyebrow. Mo Fan was stunned for a moment and immediately reacted to Zhao Manyan with 2 words, piss off. Chapter 171 Choose Any Magic Tool. In the early morning, Dean Xiao had already brought the good news to Mo Fan, and asked Mo Fan to follow him to redeem his rewards. When they got to the library that had the appearance of a huge book, Mo Fan was brought to the top floor, where access was not permitted to any other students of the institution. As they reached the top floor, Dean Xiao stood with his hands at his back and looked at the Pearl Institution's surroundings through the windows. Dean Xiao. When Mo Fan entered the meeting room, Mo Fan saw Dean Xiao standing alone. From the lonely, yet slightly heavy atmosphere of the meeting room, Mo Fan could tell that Dean Xiao was worrying about some other matters. Dean Xiao turned around, a gentle smile on his face. I knew that you were hiding some other hidden trump cards during the examination. Though I do not know how you evaded Mu Nujiao's skill, I sensed some dark magic, said Dean Xiao with a smile. That is not really a secret. If Dean Xiao investigated my background in Bo City, then you have all the answers you need, replied Mo Fan casually. Back then, it was Principal Zhu's idea to announce Mo Fan was an innate dual element at the high school exam. However, when the catastrophe struck Bo City, no one had the luxury to pay attention to this matter anymore, especially when Principal Zhu died. But if Dean Xiao really wanted to dwell on this matter, all he had to do was to send some people to ask those people who used to reside in Bo City, and he would have all the answers he needed. There is no need for that. One day, you will reveal your secrets all by yourself. Now, let's get to the main point, shall we? Said Dean Xiao. Of course, replied Mo Fan as he rubbed his hands together. Tisk tisk. The resources for all new students. Just imagine how much these resources are worth. Perhaps he could buy a luxury bungalow in Shanghai already. These resources were to be given to different students from different elements, and we have to change them into resources you could use. Thus, what we did was change some of the resources that you would not be able to use into something that could benefit you, explained Dean Xiao. Mo Fan understood the reason behind this action, nodded, and said, as long as I get the resources promised to me in full. If the resources had not been converted into something Mo Fan could use, they would just be useless rubbish to him. Hence, just like what Dean Xiao said, they could only estimate the total amount of the resources and how much they were worth before they converted these resources to something Mo Fan could use. I know that you have barely any good magic equipment with you, so here are a few higher class pieces of magic equipment suitable for the battles of intermediate level mages. You may only pick one of them. Dean Xiao said, as he waved his sleeves and a few small-sized magic items appeared on the table, lying there quietly waiting for Mo Fan to pick one of them. Intermediate-level magic equipment, they must be quite expensive, he blurted out excitedly. The value of these magic items solely depends on the ones using them. But if you were to put them on sale, each and every one of these magic items here are worth at least this amount, explained Dean Xiao as he raised his hand, palm out. 50,000? Asked Mo Fan. His answer was quickly rejected by Dean Xiao with a shake of his head. 500,000? Asked Mo Fan, amazed. Our institution spends quite a great deal on the students' resources every year. Part of these resources are donated by the outstanding students of our schools that have graduated, some are funded by our institutions. However, we will only give you the public resources funded by the institution, Dean Xiao explained. Nodding again, Mo Fan agreed, understanding that the resources donated by the outstanding graduates of the Pearl Institution were part of the reward and punishment given to those juniors that did not take part in the competition. Now, pick one of these magic items and you will receive the promised resources later on, Dean Xiao directed him. There were already tiny stars blinking in Mo Fan's eyes. Damn, with a piece of intermediate-level magic equipment worth $500,000 and the other rewards, if I knew that there was so much included, I would have gone all in to defeat Mu Nujiao, even if I had to expose my fire element. Would you mind explaining to me what can these items do? I know nothing much about magic equipment. These are something luxurious that could only be toyed around with by those rich people, not poor ones like me, Mo Fan asked eagerly. Certainly, this one close to your hand is the blood tabby. It is made with the bloody bones of the blood beast in the Long Plain Mountains. Once equipped, the mage will be bestowed with the extreme sprinting capabilities of the blood beasts, which is even greater than the wind path, drifting shadows. Other than that, each time this tabby is charged with the essence of a blood beast, the tabby will be able to unleash power strong enough to crush a mountain, explained Dean Xiao, giving off the feeling of a professional in this field. Offensive ability. Nice, said Mo Fan. Mo Fan then recalled the fight he had with Yu Ang. He had used magic shoes. If Mo Fan was not wrong, he still remembered that Yu Ang's magic shoes only allowed Yu Ang to execute an evasive move once, which was nowhere close to the level of the blood tabi. How about that? It looks like armor, asked Mo Fan, as he pointed at the item in the center. Yes, that is magic armor. The largest difference between armor and shield magic equipment is that the shield's defense is dead. A magic shield needs the mage to activate the shield so that it can help the mage to fend off an attack, which is way different from magic armor. Magic armor is strong to the point where the mage can just wear it, and it does not require the attention of the mage to activate it for its defense. It may not be able to fend off attacks completely like magic shields, but indirectly, it can greatly increase our durability. At every level, the bodies of mages are weak, making magic armor one of the life-saving insurances for them. This magic armor is called the Jade Scale Mail. It is known for its flexibility, so that even when wind element mages wear it, their mobility will not be affected by it at all. At the same time, this amplifies its flaws greatly. This mail possesses a weaker defense than other magic armors, making it hard to take a very strong impact or destructive power head-on, explained Dean Xiao. You were saying this type of magic armor must be one of the worst choices among the other magic equipment? Asked Mo Fan. Precisely. Magic armor is always expensive. They are only slightly cheaper than the Stardust magic tools. This Jade Scale Mail will only be able to sustain attacks from minion-class monsters, but when it comes to the attacks delivered by warrior-class monsters or any intermediate-tier magic, it will at most prevent the mage wearing it from dying, replied Dean Xiao. Magic armor might be a very good thing to use since it could be worn by mages throughout an entire battle. But when it came to Mo Fan, their inferior defensive capability would be less useful. Chapter 172 A Finger. The magic armor is way too expensive. I suggest you look for other magic armor that is more suitable for you when you have the capability in the future. Now, let's take a look at this magic sword. Its name is the Black Cleaver. Once activated, it will form the front claw of a blackbird and launch a wind disc, shredding that is equivalent to the strength of the joint attack between two evolving monsters, explained Dean Xiao. Upon listening to Dean Xiao's explanation, Mo Fan thought for a moment and felt that as a man who possessed the fire and lightning elements, which were the two strongest elements in terms of offensive power, he did not lack any attacking strength. Thus, he figured that this Black Cleaver would be more suitable for mages that lacked offensive power. To be honest, Mo Fan actually needed all of this magic equipment in many ways. After all, if he had all of this, his combat power would be increased to another level. Different types of magic equipment would be able to alter the way he fought, granting him more flexibility and options. However, if he had to pick one, Mo Fan thought that the blood tabi was a better piece of magic equipment for him. Although he had learned a positioning magic, the shadow elements magic that allowed Mo Fan to move freely was still not invincible. Unlike the wind and earth element magic that allowed the users to move freely at any time and anywhere, the shadow element magic would be useless if there were no shadows in the surroundings at all. Without shadow, the shadow element magic was entirely unusable. Originally, Mo Fan lacked defensive capabilities the most, but this magic armor was just too useless. Hence, he felt that the magic shoes would be much better for him, as it was always better to have another trick that could save his life. Since you are not considering the remaining magic equipment, you may now brand this blood tabi with your own spirit power, Dean Xiao told him. In just a moment of time, Mo Fan branded the blood tabi, linking it with his soul. With just a flick of his mind, the blood tabi would immediately appear on his legs, bestowing on him the power of the blood beast. Thank you, Dean Xiao, Mo Fan said gratefully and confidently after receiving a high-grade magical item. There is no need for you to thank me. You earned this yourself. Now, the resources for your cultivation, replied Dean Xiao. As long as I'm not given any Stardust magic tool, please change into something else for me, Mo Fan answered quickly. When it came to cultivation magic tools, there might be nothing that could be compared to Mo Fan's little loach pendant that had absorbed the water in the underground holy spring. No, of course not. This resource I'm talking about here is an access granted to those outstanding or those who have contributed to the institution. We really have no idea on what kind of basis we are supposed to use to transfer all the public resources to you. Because of this, "We specially requested headquarters to open the three-step tower for you to cultivate in once," said Dean Xiao. As someone that had never heard of this before, Mo Fan could only ask blankly, "Three-step tower?" However, his question fell onto deaf ears, as Dean Xiao only smiled without answering his question. The reason why the Pearl Institution was able to stand at the very top among the many schools and institutions in the entire country for so many years was closely related to the three-step tower. The three-step tower could be described as a place each and every intermediate-level mage student in the main institution would fight fiercely in order to get it. The new students were not qualified to fight for the right to enter the three-step tower, and Mo Fan was one of the first. "This is a hard-to-come-by opportunity. You must not take it too lightly," Dean Xiao said seriously. Mo Fan nodded with a serious expression. He firmly believed that this three-step tower Dean Xiao was talking about was probably a sacred cultivation ground not any weaker than the underground holy spring. If it wasn't for the underground holy spring, Mo Fan would still need another few years before he ascended into the intermediate level. This type of sacred cultivation ground could greatly improve his power if he managed to secure a chance to cultivate in it. "Thank you," Mo Fan said sincerely. "I'd like to give you a little suggestion, if I may. People may only enter the three-step tower a few times. Many of the intermediate-level mages in the main institution never got the chance to enter the three-step tower at all, so just imagine how hard it is to be able to get a chance to enter the tower. You should choose a suitable time for yourself to enter the tower. At least from my point of view, you are still not prepared to enter the tower. If you entered the tower now, you would only receive minimum benefits," advised Dean Xiao. Dean Xiao was right. Mo Fan had reached the intermediate level in both the fire and lightning elements. He still had to fortify and master his current strength. His handling of a star atlas was nowhere close to Mu Nujiao. As for his summoning and shadow elements, Mo Fan only managed to raise them to the third level in his stardust, and there was still quite a long way to go to the higher tier star cloud. Trying to increase his strength to a higher level would be very inefficient if he tried to strengthen himself through the cultivation sacred ground now, and he would only waste a precious chance by doing so. Mo Fan clearly understood Dean Xiao's words. Dean Xiao wanted him to wait for a suitable time to enter the three-step tower, and only by doing so would Mo Fan be able to fully utilize the effect of the cultivation sacred ground. Other than that, with the amplification of the Little Loach pendant, early levels could be easily achieved in a matter of time, so there was no need for him to waste such a precious chance like this. Next will be the warrior class monster's spirit blood, which will provide a tremendous boost for your spirit wolf's evolution into the warrior class. All of this, however, is just something to aid your summoned beast's evolution. Whether or not it will ascend to the next level depends on itself in the end. Remember, like you, your summoned beast only reached its current level a short time ago, and its base is still not that solid yet. Nature has its own rules, and this is especially obvious among monsters. The monsters with a higher level bloodline are always smarter, fiercer, and stronger, yet their ability to reproduce is weaker, and so there are fewer of them. The ones with lower level bloodlines are relatively inferior, but they often reproduce swarms by swarms, and so are easily found. If the monsters with weaker bloodlines try to break the limits of their heritage, defying the rules of nature, and fail, they will turn to dust, Dean Xiao reminded him seriously. With a nod, Mo Fan indicated that he understood. Be it man or monster, the path of cultivation was filled with difficulties. For example, when Mo Fan tried to advance to the next level, the resistance of his mental power almost caused his brain to explode. The same was true for the evolution of monsters. If their body and mind were not strong enough, they would all die, because what they were doing was trying to discard their own bloodline in order to achieve a superior one. Keep this card. There are $2 million on this card. This is your reward for winning the competition. Among the public resources was some cash, which I placed in this card. They are all yours, said Dean Xiao as he handed over a card to Mo Fan. Mo Fan's jaw dropped. 2 million. Oh my heavens, the institution is really generous. The amount given to him right now was equivalent to hitting a jackpot in the lottery. Rich, I'm rich. Upon seeing the extreme happiness on Mo Fan's face, Dean Xiao, who was worried that Mo Fan might lose himself in the sudden wealth, warned him, money is nothing when it comes to us mages. In order to pursue ever higher achievements on the path of magic, a few million is nothing at all. Once you get to the advanced level, you might need even more than that. The cultivation path of a mage is a lifelong path that requires a huge fortune. After the tragedy of Bow City, I assume you now know deeply the responsibilities of a true mage, and us humans' position in the food pyramid of this world. Don't worry, Dean Xiao. I, Mo Fan, will not be satisfied with just being an intermediate-level mage. Good, then I hope that if a disastrous event bigger than the tragedy in Bow City arrives, you will be able to contribute, replied Dean Xiao. Then, Dean Xiao, may I ask how much a wing magic equipment costs? Asked Mo Fan curiously. At least this amount, and it is not negotiable, Dean Xiao answered, as he raised one finger.